Meet an aircraft that completely redefined its identity during World War II, the Supermarine Spitfire. This wasn't just any ordinary fighter plane. It was a marvel of speed and firepower. Pilots loved it for its unmatched agility. And for everyday people, it was a machine that could change the course of the war. Its design and aerodynamics, combined with high speed, and kept it ahead on every battlefield. But in reality, this incredible aircraft had a major weakness. The problem was that the Spitfire's engine would cut out during steep dives, especially when performing negative G maneuvers. This issue came from the Rolls-Royce Merlin engine's float-type carburetor. On the other hand, the German Luftwaffe's Messerschmitt 109 fighter planes were safe from this problem. That's why German pilots often had the upper hand over British pilots during battles, and their attacks felt more deadly. Britain won the Battle of Britain with great difficulty, and this engine issue with the Spitfire was a major reason why it was so challenging. If Britain wanted a clear victory in World War II, fixing the Spitfire problem was absolutely crucial. The RAF gave it their all, and major engineering firms worked on it too. But the issue couldn't be solved immediately, and pilots had to face serious difficulties in battle because of it. Finally, a solution was found, and it came from someone no one probably expected, a woman, Beatrice Shilling. She worked a miracle on the Spitfire's engine, practically eliminating the risk of engine cutouts during dives for RAF pilots. Today, Beatrice Shilling is credited by the Allies as one of the reasons they won World War II, proving that even a small invention can change the course of a war. Viewers, the Rolls-Royce Merlin engine issue in the Spitfire first appeared in 1938. At the time, it probably wasn't seen as a big problem, since pilots didn't do aggressive dives before World War II. But by 1940, during the height of the Battle of Britain, it wasn't just a technical issue anymore. It became a matter of life and death for RAF pilots. Every steep dive carried the risk of the engine suddenly cutting out, casting a shadow of death over the pilots and testing both their tactics and bravery. The problem was even bigger because before World War II, the British government had already produced 20,000 plus Spitfires. That meant all of these planes had the same engine issue, since every one of them used the Rolls-Royce Merlin engine. The situation became even more critical when the British realized that the other fighter planes in the Royal Air Force, like the Hawker Hurricane and the Bolton-Paul Defiant, also used the same Rolls-Royce Merlin engine. In other words, this engine problem put pilots at risk on every RAF front. The year 1940 was the height of World War II, and the situation was even more challenging for the Allies because they had to face Nazi Germany's powerful attacks with fighter planes that had faulty engines. RAF pilots not only fought enemy aircraft, but also had to deal with the constant risk of engine cutouts on every flight. At the same time, Nazi Germany was putting pressure on France and Britain, and RAF pilots had to put their skill and bravery to the ultimate test on every mission. During this time, whenever German pilots advanced with their Messerschmitt 109s into Allied territory, RAF Spitfires would immediately take to the skies to intercept them. To avoid enemy fire, pilots had to perform highly advanced maneuvers, sometimes diving sharply downward at full speed, and other times pulling the plane up with all their strength to change position. In World War II dogfights, this became routine. Planes soaring to the skies would sometimes dive to dodge enemy fire, and other times pull up sharply to bring their opponents right into their sights. These were battles that could last for hours, where every move could mean the difference between life and death, or the success of the mission. Now imagine what a pilot must go through if their engine suddenly cuts out in the middle of a life-or-death dogfight. Luckily, during the Battle of Britain, British pilots had a major advantage. Their fuel supply was close by, allowing them to stay in the air and fight for hours. On the other hand, German pilots had to first cross the English Channel, then face intense dogfights, and afterward return to their base to refuel. This entire process was a huge disadvantage for them. That's why German pilots often struggled against the defective Spitfires. The Battle of Britain ended, but World War II was still raging at its peak. This strange problem in the Spitfire became especially noticeable during nosedives. Unfortunately, the Rolls-Royce Merlin engine's carburetor had its fuel outlet on the bottom. When the plane dove sharply, gravity affected the fuel inside the engine and carburetor in the opposite way. The fuel in the carburetor moved upward, away from the outlet. This meant the engine would temporarily cut out and then jerk back to life, creating an even more dangerous situation for the pilot until the plane leveled out again. It's really just simple physics, but in dogfights, the effect could mean the difference between life and death for the pilots. To solve this critical problem, problem, the world's most talented engineers were assigned the task. Cyril Lovesey from Rolls-Royce and Eddie Fisher from the Royal Aircraft Establishment poured all their expertise into it, trying a number of highly sophisticated technical solutions. But with every attempt, the problem only became more complex, and new minor issues started appearing in the plane. A perfect understanding of the engine and the physics involved was essential, and it was so challenging that everyone was baffled at the time. Then, in 1940, a woman accomplished what everyone else had failed to do. Today, we remember this genius as Beatrice Shilling, who ensured both the lives and mission safety of RAF pilots. It was 1938. On one side, the Spitfire was taking the skies for its first test flights, while on the other, Beatrice Shilling was tearing down and rebuilding her favorite machine, a powerful 490 cubic centimeters Norton motorcycle. This was the very bike she had ridden to astonish everyone at the Brooklands racetrack, becoming the fastest woman on a motorcycle in all of Europe. Shilling's passion wasn't limited to racing. She was a born engineer. Nuts, bolts, and engines felt like toys to her, and this wasn't a new fascination. In 1919, when Beatrice was just a 10-year-old girl, she noticed her sisters would ride ahead on their bicycles while she was always left behind. That's when she decided she would one day have her own motorcycle and started saving money for it. By the age of 14, Beatrice bought her first two-stroke Royal Enfield. Soon, she began fixing basic problems on her bike herself and gradually reached a level where she could completely disassemble and rebuild it. By 15, she had decided to pursue engineering as her future career. But in 1924, it wasn't easy for girls to find a place in the engineering field. Society was far from supportive. The guidance of the Women's Engineering Society opened the path for her. In October 1929, Beatrice enrolled in the Department of Electrical Engineering at Victoria University of Manchester and became the first female student in the department. Later, she also took classes in thermodynamics and mechanical engineering, which was her true passion. Alongside university, she remained active at the Brooklands racetrack, competing against men. The performance of her modified 490 cubic centimeters Norton motorcycle was remarkably stable, outperforming other bikes. Beatrice had made significant technical changes herself to the carburetor and engine tuning, boosting the bike's pickup far beyond the norm. At the time, even Beatrice Shilling had no idea that these technical skills would later be crucial in solving the most critical problem in Spitfire and Hurricane fighters during World War II. By the time the war began, Beatrice had already been working at the Royal Aircraft Establishment for nearly 3 years. Early in her career, her role was mostly limited to technical documentation, writing reports, compiling performance data, and assisting engineering teams. But by November 1939, after multiple promotions, she had reached the position of technical officer. In this role, she was directly responsible for research and development of carburetor systems, the very field where the Spitfire's engine would later face its biggest challenge. When Rolls-Royce's senior engineers repeatedly failed to solve the Spitfire's engine cutout issue, Beatrice Shilling officially requested the chance to work on the problem herself. At first, people weren't very supportive. Most engineers thought the task was far too complex, and that a woman might not be able to handle mechanical troubleshooting at this level. But as soon as she was given permission, Shilling analyzed the problem in detail and came up with a practical solution in just a few days. Authorities were astonished and even somewhat embarrassed because the issue that had baffled top experts for so long was resolved with surprisingly simple mechanical adjustment. Her design was based on a small brass restrictor plate with a precisely calculated hole. Installing this plate in the carburetor controlled the excess fuel flow and largely eliminated the engine cutout problem during nosedives. The best part of the solution was that the restrictor plate could be installed directly on the aircraft under field conditions, no heavy modifications, and minimal downtime. It proved to be a fast, reliable, and practically effective fix. After solving the issue technically, the next challenge was physically installing the restrictor plate in Spitfires and Hurricanes at various air bases. Beatrice Shilling personally took on this practical phase. She traveled long distances on her Norton motorcycle, reached different RAF stations, and worked alongside field technicians to fit the restrictor plates into the aircraft. The solution proved so dependable that RAF personnel informally nicknamed the brass restrictor Miss Shilling's orifice. This small component didn't completely eliminate the problem, but reduced engine cutouts so much that pilots felt far more confident in dogfights. Afterward, Beatrice also worked on an updated carburetor design for the Rolls-Royce Merlin engine, which permanently addressed the issue in future variants. After World War II, when pilots and RAF officials recognized the importance of her contribution, Beatrice Shilling received significant credit and was officially honored with the Order of the British Empire OBE. Instead of stepping back after the war, she continued advancing her engineering work. By the 1950s, her research had expanded into advanced military systems like rocketry, ramjets, and guided weapons. In 1955, Beatrice was appointed Senior Principal Scientific Officer at the Royal Aircraft Establishment, a clear recognition of her technical expertise. Beatrice Shilling was not just an engineer or a technician. She was one of the few people of her time paving a new path for women in military engineering. Her technical skill, disciplined approach, and problem-solving ability directly influenced the performance of RAF aircraft. Historians still believe that if her contributions hadn't reached frontline aircraft in time, the outcome of World War II might have been very different. Her role in engineering wasn't limited to a single mechanical fix. She proved that talent and competence are never restricted by gender. That's why Beatrice Shilling's name remains among those who made a real technical difference in the war effort. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the lives of the women who served their nations during the war. Remarkable individuals who may not be widely remembered, yet whose courage and expertise helped shape history. And now, get ready. Our next documentary will uncover secret societies, hidden crime networks, and the untold stories that have remained behind the curtain for decades.